The hall at Tescherhold has held cadets for 900 years, and in all that time, the front of the room has carried one chair that no one is permitted to sit in. I am old enough now that the young ones think I cannot see them looking at it. They can. Their eyes go to it the way a tongue goes to a broken tooth, not on purpose, not all at once, but again and again across the long hours of a lecture, drawn back to the wrongness of it. A plain chair, iron frame, worn cushion, set apart from the tiered benches by an arm's length of empty floor. It faces the lectern as if someone were meant to be in it. No one ever is. On the night before a class ships out, I tell them why. I have told this story 41 times. 41 classes have sat in those benches with their new rank cords still stiff at their throats, certain of their own immortality the way only the young and the well-fed can be, and 41 times I have watched that certainty drain out of them by the end of the telling. I do not enjoy it. A tutor who enjoys frightening his students is not a tutor. He is a small, cruel animal with a good vocabulary. But I do it because the alternative is worse, and because I am the only one left who can. There are 11 of them this year. Veil cohorts run small now. I let them settle. I let the murmuring die. Outside the high windows the orbital yards burned with the cold light of 100 drive corps warming for the morning push, their ships, the ships that would carry them out past the Mendar Drift and into the long patrol arcs of the frontier. Beautiful, in the way a knife is beautiful before you know what it has done. When the last of them was quiet, I said what I always say first. You have been taught the map. They had. Every cadet of the Viral fleets learns the map before they learn to fire a weapon, because the map is older than our weapons, and it has killed more of us than any enemy. They can recite the great bearings in their sleep, the trade lanes through the concordance, the contested marches along the Hest border, the dead stars of the Sable Waste where the old empires burned each other to ash and left nothing for anyone. They know where the fuel depots are. They know which systems will sell to a Viral patrol and which will shoot first. And they know, every one of them, the way they know their own names, that the map does not go all the way to the edge. Tell me where it stops, I said. A cadet near the front lifted her chin. Sarah Vaughn, her file said, top of her gunnery scores, fast hands, the kind of bright, hard confidence that the college loves and that the frontier breaks first. The closed bearing, instructor. And what is on the other side of the closed bearing? Human space. She said it the way they all say it, carefully, the way you'd name a disease in a room where someone had died of it. There is no Viral who does not know the word. There is no creature in the reach of the long charts who does not know it. But there is a particular way the word is said by the young, and it is not respect. It is the performance of respect, worn over the top of something else, over the secret, glittering, unkillable conviction that the old fears belong to old fools, and that they, the new ones, the fast ones, will be the cohort that finally sees the thing clearly. I know that conviction because I had it too. I wore it across the closed bearing on a night I have spent the rest of my life trying to forget, and it is the reason I am standing in front of them now with a voice and a pulse, when every other soul who crossed with me is a name on a wall and a silence on a frequency that no one has answered in 50 years. Human space, I agreed. Tell me what you have been taught about it. They told me. They told me well because the college teaches it well. They told me that the closed bearing is the single line on every chart that is drawn not as a border but as a quarantine. That no fleet of the concordance, no Hest war host, no scavenger guild however desperate, sets a course across it. That the species who keep the deep records, the Ulam, the archive keepers who have watched the galaxy turn for longer than the Viral have had eyes, mark human space with a glyph they use for nothing else. A glyph that does not mean enemy and does not mean danger but means, in the oldest sense of the word, do not. That the line has held for so long that no living captain has ever tested it, and the records of those who did are not records of battles. They are records of absences. Good, I said. You have learned the lesson. Now I am going to teach you why the lesson is true, and when I am done, You will believe it in a different part of yourself than the part that passed the examination. You will believe it the way you believe in cold or in falling, not because you were told, because you will understand for the rest of your lives exactly what is on the other side of that line. I let my old hand rest for a moment on the back of the empty chair. And you will understand whose chair this is. The thing you have to understand about the Hest is that they were not cowards. I say this because the young always assume that the story begins with cowardice, that whatever fled toward the closed bearing must have fled because it was afraid, and that to chase a fleeing thing is the natural and honorable act of a warrior. The young have a clean idea of pursuit. You see the back of your enemy and you take it. That is the whole of their understanding. But the Hest were not running from us because they were afraid of us. By the time my cohort met them at the edge of the Mendar Drift, the war along the border had been grinding for 2 of my lifetimes, and both sides had long since run out of fear for each other. We knew the Hest. We hated them with the comfortable, well-worn hatred of neighbors. They knew us the same way. When the Hest Raider pack broke off the engagement and ran, every Vril on my bridge understood it as a tactical retreat. A wounded enemy peeling away to regroup, the most ordinary thing in the world. We did not ask why they were running toward the line. I have thought about that more than I have thought about anything else in my life. We did not ask. The most basic question a hunting animal can ask, where is my quarry going, and why there, and not one of us asked it, because the answer was obvious and we did not want to look at it. The Hest were running toward the closed bearing because they had calculated, in whatever cold arithmetic passes for thought behind those flat gray faces, that they had a better chance of surviving what was across the line than they had of surviving us. That is the part I want you to hold on to, not the monster, the arithmetic, the Hest pack leader with a hull full of dying crew and a Vril squadron tearing the drives off his stragglers. Looked at his options and decided that the safer bet, the survivable bet, was to cross into human space and gamble that the legend was exaggerated. He was wrong, but understand what kind of wrong he was. He was not a fool who had never heard the warnings. He was a veteran of 100 years of border war, and he weighed the certain death behind him against the uncertain death ahead, and he chose the human side of the line. We chased him across it without slowing down. There were 6 ships in my squadron. I will not give you their names. The names are on the wall in the lower cloister, and you may go and read them after, and you should, because reading a name is a small thing you can do for the dead and they cannot do it for themselves. But I will not say them here in this warm room where they would land as words and nothing more. They were not words to me. They were the people I trained beside, the people I drank with, the people whose children I was supposed to teach when those children were old enough for this hall. One of them was my bond second, Corin Vale, who had pulled me out of a burning bay at the siege of Hollow Star, and who I had sworn, in the way our people swear it, to die beside if it came to that. It did not come to that. Dying beside someone is a thing you can only do if you both die in the same place, where the other can see you go. That is not what the closed bearing gives you. The closed bearing does not let you die beside anyone. It takes you one at a time, in places no one can see, and it does not give the bodies back. We crossed the line at full burn. I want to describe to you what that was like, the crossing itself, because it was not what any of us expected, and the wrongness of it is the first thing I should have read as a warning. We expected resistance. A border that holds for 1,000 years, you imagine it bristling. You imagine the line itself is a wall of guns, a picket of warships, a wailing net of sensors that lights up the moment a foreign drive signature crosses it. You imagine that the reason nothing comes back from human space is that human space is a fortress, and that we would die against its walls the honest way, the way you die against any strong enemy, fast and loud and pushing forward. There was nothing. We crossed the closed bearing and there was nothing there. No picket, no wall, no challenge on any frequency. The stars on the far side were the same stars, indifferent and cold. Our sensors swept the volume ahead and found ordinary space, a little debris, the cooling wakes of the Hest we were chasing, the gravity shadows of distant, unremarkable suns. For the better part of a watch, we drove deeper into the most forbidden region in the charted galaxy, and the only sign that we had crossed into it at all was the line on our own map, the line we had drawn ourselves, telling us we should not be where we were. The cadets always lean forward at this part. They think this is the part where it gets exciting. They are wrong, but I understand the mistake. They have been raised on the idea that the absence of the enemy is the absence of danger. They have never been on the wrong side of the closed bearing, where the absence of the enemy is the most dangerous thing there is. Corin felt it before I did. She always had a sense for trouble that ran ahead of her reason. She came to stand beside my command station. I can still see the exact set of her shoulders, the way she held the rail, and she said quietly, so the bridge crew would not hear, "Hadrek, why are they letting us in?" I told her they were not letting us in. I told her there was no one to let us in or keep us out, that the legend was a legend, that 1,000 years of fear had built a wall in the mind of the galaxy where there was no wall in space. I told her, and I believed it. God's help me. I believed it completely. That we were about to find out that the great closed frontier was empty, that the humans had died out or moved on or never been as terrible as the stories said, and that we, the 6 ships of an ordinary border squadron, were going to be the cohort that crossed the line and came back to tell the truth. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said the thing I have heard in my sleep for 50 years. "Then where did the Hest go?" The Hest we had been chasing had been ahead of us, running hard, their drive wakes a bright clear trail across our sensors. And at some point in the watch, I could not say exactly when, and that is part of the horror of it, that I could not say when the trail had simply stopped. Not turned, not scattered, not gone cold the way a drive wake goes cold when a ship powers down to hide. Stopped, as if the Hest had reached a certain point in the empty dark and ceased, mid-burn, to exist. The wakes ran on ahead of us bright and confident, and then they ended all of them at the same place, like a word cut off in the middle. I ordered the squadron to hold. We dropped from the burn and we hung there in the dark, 6 ships in a loose formation, staring at the place where our quarry had gone out like a snuffed flame, and for the first time since we crossed the line, I felt the thing that I have spent my life since trying to teach to the young. It was not fear. I want to be precise, because precision is the only honest thing I have to give you. Fear is a response to a threat you can see. This was the response to a threat you cannot see and cannot find and cannot, no matter how you sweep the dark, prove is there at all. It is the feeling of standing in a room you know is empty and being certain in the meat of your spine that it is not. The young ones think the terror of human space is the moment the fleet appears. I am here to tell you that the fleet never appeared. That is the whole of it. That is the thing the stories get wrong, the thing the title mongers and the war poets get wrong, all of them painting the same picture of the great human armada falling on the foolish trespassers in fire and judgment. There was no armada. In all the time I spent on the wrong side of the closed bearing, I never once saw a human warship, never saw a human face, never received a human challenge or a human demand or a human threat. What happened was quieter than that, and worse. Our smallest ship was the first. She was the Senate's Edge, a scout cutter, fast and thin-hulled, crewed by 9. Her captain was a young Vril named Ost who I had recommended for the command myself, and who had thanked me for it with the open, uncomplicated gratitude of someone who does not yet know what command will ask of him. When we held formation at the place where the Hest trail ended, the Edge was on our forward arc, closest to the dark we were all staring into. She did not explode. I need you to hear that. There was no flash, no debris bloom, no scream on the comms. One moment the Edge was on my sensor board, a clean familiar mark with 9 lives behind it. Holding station 2,000 spans off my bow. And then the mark was gone, not destroyed. Gone. The space where she had been was empty space, ordinary space, and our sensors found nothing, no wreckage, no energy signature, no drive wake leading away, nothing to say that a ship and 9 people had ever been there at all. I called the Edge. I called her by name on every frequency we had. The comms officer beside me, a steady old hand named Tail who had heard 10,000 transmissions in his career and never once let his voice shake, called her too, again and again. And the only thing that came back was the sound that I have never been able to describe to anyone who was not there. The sound that is not a sound. The flat dead nothing of a frequency that has no one on the other end of it. I have heard silence before. Silence is the natural state of space. But there is a difference between the silence of a channel that no one is using and the silence of a channel that someone was using a moment ago and is not using now, and the difference is the whole of what I am trying to teach you. The first silence is empty. The second silence is occupied. Something is in it. Something took the voice out of it, deliberately, the way you would close a door, and is now standing on the other side of that door listening to you knock. We ran. Of course we ran. The legend does not survive 1,000 years because the people who cross the line are stupid. It survives because the people who cross the line do exactly what we did, which is to come to their senses one terrible instant too late and turn for home with everything their drives can give. I ordered the squadron about. I ordered full burn back along our own track, back toward the closed bearing, back toward the ordinary dangerous knowable galaxy where the enemies have faces and the dead leave bodies. We did not all make it to the turn. I will not narrate the others to you the way I narrated the Edge. I have decided, across 41 tellings, that it is not necessary and that it is not kind, and I have learned that the kindness is for me as much as for the listener. It is enough to say that we lost them the way we lost the Edge, not in battle, not in fire. One at a time between one sensor sweep and the next, with no warning and no wreckage and no answer to the calls, a mark on the board and then no mark, and then the occupied silence where the mark had been. We did not see what took them. In all my time on the wrong side of the line, I never saw the thing itself. None of us did. That is not a gap in the record. That is the record. That is what human space is. It is the place where your ship stopped being on the board and you never see why. By the time I reached the closed bearing, I was alone. One ship. Mine. A boarder cruiser built for 50 and crewed by then by the 11 of us who had been aboard her and were still aboard her, which is the only mercy the line ever gave me, that it took the others one ship at a time and left my own crew, for whatever reason, untouched until the end. I drove for the line with everything the cruiser had, and I did not expect to reach it, because I had watched 5 ships fail to outrun a thing that left no trace and made no sound, and there was no reason in the cold arithmetic of it that my ship should be the one to cross back. And here is the part of the story that the young always wait for, the part where they expect the hero to do something, to fire the shot, to make the run, to find the clever maneuver that the doomed others lacked. There was no shot. There was no maneuver. I did nothing clever. I did nothing at all except sit in my command chair and watch the closed bearing crawl toward me across the sensor board and wait, with a calm I have never felt before or since, the calm that comes when you have entirely given up, to stop being a mark on the board. It did not happen. I crossed the line. My ship and my 11 crew crossed back over the closed bearing into ordinary space, and the occupied silence behind us did not follow, and the thing that had unmade 5 ships and 49 of my people, without ever showing itself to me, let me go. I want to be very careful now, because I am coming to the only part of this story that matters, and I have spent 50 years making sure I tell it exactly, with no word more than the truth and no word less. It let me go. I did not escape. Do you understand the difference? A thing you escape is a thing that tried to keep you and failed. That is not what happened on the wrong side of the closed bearing. 5 of my ships did not escape and 1 did, and the one that did was not faster or stronger or cleverer than the 5 that did not. The arithmetic does not allow for my survival. There is no version of that night in which I outran what was behind me, because what was behind me did not run. It simply decided at the edge of every ship whether that ship would continue to exist, and for 5 ships it decided one way, and for mine it decided another. I did not escape human space. Human space released me. And I know this is the thing. This is the whole thing. This is what I carried back across the line and have been carrying ever since. I know that it released me on purpose, because of what came across the comms in the last moment before I reached the closed bearing. One transmission, the only one I ever received from the far side of the line, the only human thing I have ever encountered in a life that has been defined, root and branch, by the human thing I encountered that night. It was not a threat. I have turned it over 10,000 times looking for the threat in it, and there is none. It was not loud. It was not cruel. It came through on a frequency we do not use, in our own tongue, in the formal high register of the verbal that a foreigner would only know if they had studied us with great care over a very long time. And it was a single sentence, spoken by a voice I could not have told you was young or old, male or female, kind or cold, because it was none of those things and somehow all of them. The way a thing that is very large and very far away is none of the things you have words for. It said, "Go home and tell them what the silence sounds like." And then I was across the line, and the silence was behind me, and I have spent every year since doing exactly what I was told. That is whose chair this is. I have watched that thought arrive in 41 classes of cadets, and it arrives the same way every time, a stillness that starts at the front benches and moves backward through the room as one mind after another understands what I have just told them. The chair at the front is not a memorial to the dead. It is not Corin's chair, or Ost's, or the chair of any of the 49 who did not cross back. The dead do not need a chair. The dead are on the wall in the lower cloister where you will go and read their names. The chair is mine. It is the chair of the returned, and there has only ever been one of us, and I sit in it on the first day of every term, and I stand in front of it on the last night of every class, because the humans did not let me live. They let me carry. There is a difference, and the difference is the most important thing I will ever teach you. I am not a survivor of human space. There are no survivors of human space. I am a message human space chose to send, and the message is me, standing here, alive, ordinary, unremarkable in every way except that I crossed the closed bearing and came back, which is the one thing that is supposed to be impossible, and which they made possible for exactly one reason. So that there would always be someone in this hall who could tell you, not from the records, not from the legend, but from his own living mouth, that the stories are true. They are not exaggerated. They are not the fear of old fools. The galaxy did not draw that line out of superstition. The galaxy drew that line because for 1,000 years a small number of veterans, hard people, brave people, people exactly like the ones I see in front of me tonight, looked at the legend the way you are looking at it now, as a thing that surely could not be as bad as they say, and crossed the line to find out. And the galaxy learned, one squadron at a time, one absence at a time, that the legend is not the exaggeration. The legend is the kindness. The legend is the warning the humans built for us so that we would not have to keep learning it the way I learned it. I crossed the closed bearing because I believed I was brave. I have come to understand that I was not brave. Bravery is a thing you offer against a danger you can see, a worthy thing, the thing this college exists to make in you, and the thing the frontier will ask of you 100 times before you are my age. Against the Hest, be brave. Against the raiders of the sable waste, against the cold and the long dark and the 1,000 honest dangers of the patrol arcs, be brave, and I will be proud of you, and your names will go on no wall before their time. But the closed bearing does not want your bravery. The closed bearing is not a danger you face. It is a direction you do not go. And the only courage it will ever ask of you is the smallest and the hardest courage there is, the courage to look at the line on the map, and to feel the old young certainty rise in you that you would be the one to see the truth, and to set that certainty down, and to turn your ship, and to live. Sarah Vaughn was not leaning forward anymore. None of them were. The bright, hard confidence was gone out of her face, and something older had come into it, something I have put into 41 faces and have never once been glad to put there. "Instructor," she said, and her voice was careful in a different way now, careful the way you are careful with something that might break. "The transmission. Why would they, if they could speak to us, if they understood us well enough to say it in the high register, why not just close the border? Why send anyone back at all? It is always the best of them who asks it. I have come to count on it, the way you count on a particular star to rise. Because a closed border is a thing you test," I said. "A wall invites the question of what is behind it. A silence you can tell yourself is only a silence, but a witness—" I touched the back of the chair again, the worn iron of it, warm from the heat of the hall. "A witness you cannot argue with. They did not need to defend the line with ships. They defended it with me. They understood us better than we understand ourselves. They understood that the one thing that would keep the Vril away from human space forever was not a fleet they could die against gloriously, but an old man in a warm room who would look them in the eye and tell them, from his own life, that on the other side of that line their ships will stop being on the board and they will never, ever know why." I straightened. My back is not what it was, and the hall was very quiet, and outside the windows their ships were burning bright and cold in the yards, waiting to carry them to the frontier in the morning. To the honest frontier, the survivable frontier, the one I am sending them to with all the hope an old tutor has left in him. "You will patrol the marches," I said. "You will fight the Hest if it comes to that, and the raiders and the cold, and you will be brave. And most of you will come home, and I will be glad. And one day, years from now, you will be on a bridge of your own at the edge of the charts, and you will see the closed bearing on your map, and you will feel something rise in you that tells you the old fool Hadrek was wrong, that you are faster than I was, that you would see the truth where I only saw shadows. I let that sit. When that day comes, I want you to remember that I am the truth. I am what is left of the cohort that thought exactly what you will be thinking. I came back because they let me come back, to stand in this room and tell you the only thing worth knowing about human space, which is the thing I was sent home to say and have said now 41 times and will say to you once, and only once, and then never again. I have a rule. I will say the warning a single time in a class's hearing plainly, and I will not repeat it however they ask, because a thing repeated becomes a thing recited, and a thing recited is a thing you stop hearing, and I would rather they carry one sentence they truly heard than a refrain they learned to nod along to. So I said it the way it was said to me, in the high formal register, in the voice I have spent 50 years trying to make sound the way that voice sounded, which is to say like something very large and very far away that has no reason to lie. Never follow them. Never cross the line. Whatever runs toward human space, let it run and turn your ship and live, because nothing that enters that silence ever comes back out of it, and the galaxy has only ever been given one of us, and you are looking at him, and there will not be another. No one moved. 11 cadets sat in the tiered benches with their new rank cords stiff at their throats and looked at me, and at the chair, and at the cold burning ships in the windows, and I watched the lesson finish moving into the place where it would live in them now for the rest of their lives. Not the part that passed the examination, but the deeper part, the part that believes in cold and in falling. Then I dismissed them, and I sat down in the chair that is mine, the chair of the only thing human space ever sent back, and I let them file out past me into the last quiet night before the frontier, and I did not say the warning again. I never do.